Hello everyone, and welcome to the last Seder Segments, Part 6. Just before the meal, we recite a number of blessings. Blessings we know are pretty standard throughout this part of the Seder. For example, we have 4 cups of wine. And for each cup we say Borei Pri Hagafen. And remember that there is no hierarchy when it comes to the cups of wine. Everyone drinks as a free man or free woman. This is one way to demonstrate that the Seder is without any kind of class distinction, economic distinction, or social status distinction. We also have the blessing of the green vegetable, the karpas in salt water, representing the green of spring, and the green and the water might also represent the symbiosis of land and sea, which is a very nice idea in my opinion. But before the Shulchan Orech, before the dinner, we recite a number of blessings in reference to the matzah, the maror, the bitter herb, and the charoset. We'll come to that in a minute. As I've explained before, the purpose for these blessings is to suggest a symbolic understanding, to recognize the symbolism of each one of these objects. They are not there merely as food, but they are there more as symbols. And the symbolism is so vital that we actually are supposed to refrain from eating a few hours prior to the Seder. And one of the ideas is that we should taste the matzah b'te'avon. We should taste it with an appetite, have an appetite to eat it with intention. Now, there are different practices and different nuances when it comes to these blessings, but I will share what, at least for this Western European-oriented Jew, is common practice. First, before any of the concluding pre-meal blessings, we wash our hands. Now this time we wash as is typical before any meal. When we are about to make motzi, we wash, we say the blessing al netilat yadayim, and then we continue. If you recall, earlier on at the beginning of the Seder, before the karpas, before the green vegetable dipping into salt water, we wash our hands without a blessing. One of the reasons suggested is it arouses the curiosity of our children, who wonder why we are washing hands at this early juncture of the Seder. Again, I believe the Seder and the architects of this ritual were blessed with tremendous foresight and tremendous wisdom. They understood the needs and the character of children, and they wanted to ensure that children would participate in the entire pre-meal festivities, and so they created a ritual which involves no blessing, but arouses the curiosity of children. Okay, we now come to the blessings for the matzah. And normally, the blessing over bread is hamotzi lecha min haaretz, and indeed we recite that blessing first. But because tonight is different in that we are not eating bread, but rather matzah, we have a second blessing, al achilat matzah, the command for eating the matzah. Now, here is the ritual. And I realize that I took my kippah off, so pardon me for this. We hold all 3 of the matzahs together as we say the first blessing, hamotzi lecha min haaretz. And normally there are 2 loaves of bread, supposed to represent the extra portion of manna provided on Friday to compensate for Shabbat or for holiday. Today we have the 2 pieces of matzah representing the 2 loaves of bread, but a third piece of matzah, because matzah is lechem oni. It's the bread of poverty. It's not the bread of affliction. That's really an improper translation. It's a bread of poverty. And so we have 3 pieces of matzah. Before motzi, we hold them all together and we say hamotzi lechem min haaretz, and then we pass around or eat a piece of I'm sorry, we didn't do the second blessing yet. After the first blessing, we put down the bottom piece of matzah. That is going to be reserved for the sandwich, for the korech. We now hold in our hands the top two pieces of matzah. The first piece, which is a whole one. The second one, which was broken, half of it or part of it put away for the afikomen. We say al achilat matzah, and then we recline to the left. Matzah is a symbol of freedom. We recline for matzah as we recline for the wine, and we take a piece of matzah. So that's the first series of blessings. Second, we recite the blessing over the maror, over the bitter herb. And I know there are various procedures, but here is the procedure I'm going to share with you. Again, romaine lettuce was the preferred form of bitter herb, and you see that from a practical purpose, it actually it makes more sense here. We dip the maror into charoset. Now, I realize that many of us have horseradish. It represents a time when horseradish was readily available. It's a lot more difficult to dip horseradish into charoset, so just smush them around, mix them together. And for that reason, it makes a lot of practical sense to have romaine lettuce, because the charoset can be put on the romaine lettuce. We say al achilat maror, the blessing for the maror, and we do not recline, because maror symbolizes bitterness, and it wouldn't be considered appropriate to recline while reciting this blessing. So now we've got the motzi and we have the maror, and we are left with the korech, with the sandwich. We take a piece of, we take first of all the bottom matzah now. We put aside the first two, whatever's left. We take the third matzah, and to everybody we give a couple of pieces of matzah, and in between the matzah we place a little bit of bitter herb and a little bit of charoset. It goes to the command al matzot umarorim yochluhu, that originally the Passover offering was eaten together with matzah and maror. We add the charoset. There is no blessing here, but we recline to the left because the matzah still is the dominant feature. The korech is is described in the name of Hillel. It might be a little subtle kind of, a subtle thought here, but that might have been a later addition to put in that the sandwich was originated by Hillel. But more important, since Hillel was acknowledged as the originator of this tradition, we mention his name. Today, whenever I wish to offer a teaching in the name of a colleague or another scholar, I will always say b'shem omro. I will always say in the name of the person who taught that lesson. It's a way to honor the individual or the scholar who created the teaching, which I am honored to share. Now, that leads us to the meal. And of course, traditions vary and melodies vary. The Seder segments, the 6 Seder segments that we have shared with you, been intended to touch upon some common themes, although they are not exhaustive and all-inclusive. But we hope that they provided a little bit of enlightenment and enrichment, which you can share either before the Seder, during, or after the Seder. The cantor now is going to conclude this program by offering and sharing a number of popular songs. I will just conclude by saying that at the end of the Seder, we recite the words L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. This year, those words take on special significance because Jerusalem and all Israel too has been a victim of COVID-19. So our hope is that whether we are here, Israel, or anywhere else throughout the globe, next year we are free to celebrate back together with our loved ones and with our beloved friends. So I hope that this Pesach does bring you some joy in whatever form it takes, that you remain safe and healthy. Chag Kasher v'Sameach. Have a very, very happy and meaningful Passover.